Well, here we are, wherever that is at the moment, its present state. We seem to be in a state of flux. I'm Ray Morgan, pen named Ray Bobbins, due to some rant I had 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago I think now, maybe more, on Mr. Moyes, which led to my time with FullTimeDEVILS, and I've done 1 or 2 pieces with him in the past. I've been invited down today to have my say on where we're sort of heading and how we've got here. But before I do any of that, I'd just like to extend all our best wishes, I think, from every United fan to Sir Alex Ferguson in his recovery from his serious injury. And we'd like to hope he's well on the way to recovery, and we'll see him at Old Trafford very soon. Get well soon, Sir Alex. Now on to more or less pleasant things, and to get an idea of where we are just now. I think you've got to look at it historically and find out how are we where we are just now. And it's not a matter of something happening overnight. It's not a matter of a season ending or a season beginning where you say, let's send the squad to America and do a bit of pre-season training, let's do this and let's do that. Our problem started some 10 years ago when, by trick and treat, the Americans bought our club over. They didn't buy us over, they just stole our club and gave us a debt of buying ourselves back, however ridiculous that sounds. So for the last 4 or 5 years of his tenure here, the greatest manager in Premiership history was working on a shoestring, and he was buying people who he knew palpably weren't good enough for Manchester United, but he bought them and he bigged them up. He never ever called a player down. If they weren't quite good enough, he just moved them out quietly. Now we all seen the ones who weren't good enough, and the problem we've got just now is that the ones he bought as make do and mend, we've still got a nucleus of them here, still here, 5 seasons later. You've got an entire back 5, including the goalkeepers I've got no problem with, but your back 4 in the main are all Fergie people. You've got 2 failed wingers playing right back and left back, and you've got 2 centre halves who perform like Bambi on ice when under any kind of pressure. Now those problems should have been addressed when Fergie first handed the reins over, because what he handed over was a viable product. It was a squad he handed over saying, this squad, as average as it is, and we all knew it was average, had just won the Premiership. And that was all down to the genius of one man. The big mistake he made was hand it to an absolute dolt. The wrong guy, for whatever reason, it went to Moyes. I don't know why, but that's all in the past now. So for 4 or 5 years I've been struggling, we've been playing catch up. We've had different managers with different ideas. We've had Moyes who brought Fellaini in, and for some reason our present incumbent has decided to extend his contract. God knows why, I have no idea. I have not a clue on that one. You've had Van Gaal who came in, bought players, sold players, absolutely killed our style of play, absolutely bored us to bits. Eventually he went his way, but not without picking up his £10 million. That was one of the men I mentioned who should have been a replacement when I was slagging Moyes off. Another one was Mourinho, but I think we got Mourinho possibly too late. Mourinho really should have came in when Fergie left. That way he had something to build on and something a stand to go from. So we lost basically a season with Moyes. I think we lost 2 seasons with Van Gaal, although he put a cup on at the end of it. But the football was just atrocious. It just was not Manchester United style. But what we're doing, we're still buying. All of a sudden we've gone from buying on the bargain basement, we've gone to paying £65 million for players. We bought something like £60 million for Di Maria, even though anybody with a brain in the head knew Di Maria did not want to be at Manchester United. It was a stopgap until he got to PSG where he wanted to be. We bought Falcao when he kicked the ball in earnest for what, 12 months, something like that. A great player in his day. He's come back to prove some kind of a player, but not the kind of player we bought. We're playing king's ransoms in money, absolute king ransoms. So Van Gaal at the end, he couldn't play our style of football, so he had to go. We brought Mourinho in, but I thought, this guy's a twat, but as long as he's our twat, I don't mind. But what he's turned out to be is a total twat for me. I know people are probably saying, give him a chance, he's the manager, this, that and the other, but historically, Mourinho, he blows teams apart, he blows clubs apart, he blows friendships apart, wherever he's been at the end of it. He just ricochets round the room. He doesn't care who he hurts, who he abuses, whose career he wrecks. He doesn't care. It's all about Jose at the end. Now we're in the present situation now where we've gone on a tour. Now the tour wasn't suddenly arranged 2 weeks ago, we're on a Friday afternoon, Jose's got the lads together and said, "Yeah, there's some tickets here. We're going to America to play 3 and 4 games. Do you fancy it?" Well, do we have to go? Of course you've got to go. It's for the club. But don't bear in mind, they'll be back in training a week. Why are we only back in training a week? Why were we not back in training earlier? We knew there's a World Cup on. We knew the kind of team we're going to be bringing to America. We knew we were going to be losing outstanding players, but that's the way it was. The World Cup was 4 years in the making. So at the end of it, Jose complained about having no players to go on the tour. So all the more reason why he should have gone back to training earlier and got some of these young players into the swing of things and hopefully get a game out of it. Who knows, you might find a nugget. Instead, he reverts back to the same old. Pereira, I think, probably one of our best players on the team. He's now said, well, he's got 3 players in front of him. And in that 3 players, he mentions McTominay and Fellaini. That is 2 static players. They can't play a ball 45 yards forward. They can play 50, 5 yards sideways, but that's no good to you. That's no good to you whatsoever. But all the time is not Jose's fault. I have spoken to the chairman. If he wants to take them on, do it in private. Don't use the players. Don't weaponise the players and their lack of ability as your main club. Go and do it privately. We all know the players that are there aren't all good enough. We all know they're lacking. But that should have been addressed over the past. This is now your 3rd season, Jose. We're in a real state of affairs now that the whole team is lopsided. How can you come off after getting trumped 4-1 by your biggest and nearest rivals, who by the way have had a really, really good transfer window? They've spent money, but they've spent good money on good players. So they're going to be overtaking us this season. I've no doubt in that, unless we change considerably. I can't see us changing enough at this stage of the game. Bear in mind, the season kicks off a week on Friday. That's our first game a week on Friday. And this guy is still saying he's not got enough players. Well, we know that. But like I say, it's not crept up on you. You've been aware of that for long enough. And again, why did we come back so late? Most of the other Premiership teams came back the 1st of July. Between the 1st and the 7th of July, the first week. And we left it, got back for a week and off we popped to America, and he said, we're not good enough. Well, we know we're not good enough because you've got a team of kids. But you don't say that to the kids. You should do what Pep done, even though he's probably talking crap, because you probably offload half of them kids. You've got to say to the kids, well, you had a good season, we've seen 1 or 2 lads there we've got big hopes for, and build them up. I can imagine that the atmosphere in that camp there, it must be fetid, it must be awful. Instead of doing things naturally, you're thinking of them. That's why Martial wants to be off. Martial is a natural off-the-cuff player. I'm not defending Martial, but Martial's attitude, I think, is as bad as Jose's. I think he's a sulker. I think he's a guy who needs all his own way, but you've got to go out and demand your own way. Ronaldo has been playing since he was 17. Always demands his own way, always gets his own way, because Ronaldo gives it you back. Messi gives it you back. Your great players give it you back, so you go out on a limb for them. So the state we are now is, I have no idea where we are. He's still threatening about he needs 2 players. I don't know what 2 he needs. He's saying he gave the board 5 players. Does that mean there's 5 try and get me 2? I don't know. I have no idea whatsoever. He started off by buying Fred. I mean, could we have got a more exotic sounding Brazilian? I mean, there's all kinds of exotic Brazilians. Why did we get Fred? But fair enough, if Fred can do the job, that's fine. We bought a kid who he claims is going to be the best fullback in Europe when he gets to that age, but he's injured at the minute, so we can't play him until September. Good planning, good planning. And we bought the 3rd choice keeper at Stoke because he had a great game against us, Old Trafford 2 seasons ago. Well, that's fine. I don't mind that in the goalkeeping area because goalkeepers are a separate club. They can keep each other going. It's good to have experience at the back. Hopefully it gets young Pereira out in a decent club and get some game time. But Jose, you've got to understand where you are. You're saying this, that and the other, and you're basically picking to bits an empire. You really are, you're picking to bits. You and Ed Woodward between you, whether you get on or not, you've got to sit down, you've got to talk it out what you really want to take this club forward. And at the moment, you're doing a very, very poor job of it. When you were buying Pogba for so many, your owners were great owners. When you were buying Zlatan and paid him 650 grand a week, you were great owners. So if I'm the owner and you're saying to me, I need this and I need that and I need the other, I'm going to say, well, what about the toys I bought you last summer? What about the toys I bought you at Christmas? You haven't played with them yet, you haven't played with them properly, just lying in the corner doing nothing. So why don't you get them up and get them playing? Why don't we start playing decent football? See, people who are Man United fans now are saying, well, where we are now is we're our owners. They're not bothered about the style of play, which they're not. They're only interested in the money, which they are. If we can finish top 4 every season, they're quite happy with that. Doesn't make any difference to them. where we're fourth or whether we're first or whether we're second. It makes no difference to them whatsoever. They're businessmen. All they see is the bottom line. All they see is profit. And they've done nothing but skim the profit of this club for the past 10 years. If you do somebody who's good with figures could possibly do a back check and find out how much we've spent in the Glazer eras. We spent the least when Fergie was here. I think 2006 was a case in point. Somebody's mentioned to me, it was absolutely abhorrent, that close season. But if you do a breakdown of what they've spent per season while our Glazers have been in charge, I think you'll find out it's pretty minuscule for a club of United size. It's rather like the government saying to the NHS, we're going to give you £20 million more. So you say, well, okay, let's break that down. So we've had nothing for 10 years off you. Now you're giving us 20 million more, but how does that compute to the 10 years we've had nothing? Same as the pay rise for nurses. How does that compute to the 10 years we've had for nothing? It works out at something like 3p a year. And that's the kind of business model that this mob work on. That's the kind of model they work on. They're not bothered about image. They're not bothered if it sells shirts, that's fine. But what they've got to realise is Manchester United's image is Manchester United. They are the business. They are the business. They are the people who wear the badge. And they are the shirts that they buy. They don't buy Glazer shirts. They don't buy Mourinho shirts. They buy Man United shirts and they stick the what in the back of it. But the way Jose is performing just now, I absolutely dread this season. I don't even know if he'll get as far as October before we decide to say to Jose, listen, you better do one. You better do a walk. He needs to get out there and speak up for the club and speak up for what we've got. Not his personal feelings, not upset he is. I'm not bothered about his dummy. He's got the biggest dummy in football, we all know that. Well, stick your dummy in your mouth and button it and do your business behind closed doors. Or do one. It's as simple as that. Nobody's holding you to ransom. He's on really, really good money. If you want to forego that money, please feel free. But if not, you want to earn your corn and you want to justify your claim to be one of the best managers in the world, which you were, past tense, you need to go and earn your money. So it's very short. It's very short-termism at the minute to try and fix this problem in less than 2 weeks. You're the man, you fix it. You caused it. You and Woodward between you have caused it. You, Woodward, the Glazers, the lack of investment, the whole shebang. It's all historically been waiting to happen, and it's come to fruit this year. Where obviously the Glazers have thought, we've spent 600 million, whatever it is, in the last 3 years. But you spent piss all in the 7 and 8 years previous to it. Nothing in real terms. You just kept taking the profits, taking the shirt money, ripping people off for season tickets, giving people season tickets, and then having to buy tickets for games they didn't want to go to, telling them to get rid of them. The ground is a shambles. This ground here used to be one of the best grounds in the Premiership. It's had no money spent on it in real terms since this mob came in through the door, through the back door, and started filching the money off this club. They've taken something like probably the best part of £1.5 billion out of this club in their own pockets, not in our pockets, not on our pitch, not on our ground, out of our club. You look at the state of that ground and you start looking at the Tottenham gate, the Tottenham ground's fair up to a brand new ground. You start looking at the Arsenal ground, Liverpool are taking theirs up, making it bigger and better. We're stuck here with a ground that's had nothing spent on it in real terms for 10 years. That's the state we're in, and the state we're in is down to primarily the Glazers. That's where we are, where we are. Fergie, at one point, I thought Fergie was going to come out and blow them out of the water. If Fergie had done that at the start, he'd have had the crowd behind him, they'd have had to sell up and piss off. But I think Fergie sort of accepted the fact that in some ways he might have been partly to blame for them getting in the back door. Because he fell out with billionaires. You know, our main shareholders were billionaires in Ireland, and we had a fallout over a racing horse. But that was it. That was Fergie, you know. So I can forgive Fergie anything, but I don't think he can forgive what's gone on since. We lost two great club men. We lost Fergie and Gill in one fell swoop. You lost the heartbeat of the club behind the scenes. We don't do transfers right. We don't move players out right. Our PR's crap. The whole club is basically closing in on itself. We've got to make some serious decisions here where we're going with this club. We've got to decide if we're going to spend the money, if we're going to go out and spend really big. And like I said early on, somebody who's good with figures, do a breakdown of what we spent in actual terms over the last 10 years while these parasites have been in charge. So I think that's about me for now. I think that's my rant. It's a while since he had a rant, but I think there's one or two things you've got to say. And Jose, listen, either do it or do one.